You open the fridge, there's nothing there. So what's it gonna be? Greasy pizza? Sad drive-thru burgers? Dish by Blue Apron is for nights like that. These are the pre-made meals of your dreams. At least 20 grams of protein, no artificial flavors or colors, no chopping, no cleanup, no guilt. Keep the flavor. Ditch the subscription. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
This episode is brought to you by Paranormal Playback, a new podcast where hosts Shar, Mel and Laura recap the spooky and entertaining world of paranormal reality TV. Each week they take a fresh look at popular shows like Ghost Adventures and Kindred Spirits, blending humour with insight as they pull apart what's happening on screen. The 3 of them are a mix of believers and skeptics, which makes for really fun conversations, sometimes leaning into mystery, other times asking the questions viewers might be thinking themselves. With their background in creative production, they know how these shows are put together, so they're great at pointing out the moments that feel real versus the ones that might be more for the cameras. And their segment, This Old Haunt, digs into the true crime side of paranormal investigations, separating fact from fiction. With Halloween coming up, it's the perfect time to add something spooky, funny and a little addictive to your playlist. For even more spooky, ghostly, paranormal content with a humorous spin, go check out Paranormal Playback. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Scary. I'm your host Will, and each week I narrate your real life paranormal encounters and cover some famous paranormal stories as well. Before we get into this week's experience, I want to say a special thank you to our new Patreon subscribers, who are Lucy Keatley, Snicker Fritz 3, Joycey and Louise Cassidy. Thank you so much for signing up to the show's Patreon, and if this is something that you are interested in where you'll get exclusive scary episodes, you can find the link in this episode's show notes, or simply go to patreon.com/scaryaparanormalpodcast. Also, don't forget, if you have your own paranormal experience that you'd like me to narrate on the show, you can send it to scaryaparanormalpodcast@gmail.com, and it just might get made into a future episode. But now, let's get into our next encounter. My experience happened in June of 2012, just a few months before I was supposed to start university. My dad always had a thing about pushing me out of my comfort zone. He worked in logistics, and through one of his long-term clients, he got it into his head that I should spend the summer on a farm in Umbria. My dad at the time made it sound like a great opportunity, and it was. He said that Carlo's father still ran the place and could use a hand during the summer months. It wasn't exactly a job, it was more of a working holiday. Room and board in exchange for labour. I was 18 and, if I'm honest, had never done a day of proper physical work in my life, coupled with the fact that I didn't speak more than 10 words of Italian. Dad had already sorted everything, and once he starts arranging things, there's no backing out. Carlo's father, the actual farm owner, was named Emilio. I was told that he was in his late 60s and he had been running an olive farm since he was a teenager. He lived there with his wife and their adult son Marco. Marco had 2 young boys who were about 6 or 7. They were around during the weekends. I flew into Perugia and remember getting picked up by someone that I didn't recognise, one of Marco's cousins, I think. He barely spoke English, but he was friendly. He was friendly enough. The drive out to the countryside took about an hour, and it was just winding through these hills that were covered in vineyards and olive trees. When we pulled up to the house, it looked exactly like something off a postcard. There was stone walls, faded green shutters, terracotta roof tiles. There were olive trees as far as you could see, stretching all the way into the hill. It wasn't anything like I'd felt in the UK. It felt kind of ancient somehow, like it was there forever. Emilio met me outside. He was this wiry, deeply tanned man who had this skin that you only get from working outdoors your whole life. I remember that he shook my hand really firmly but didn't really smile. His wife was a lot warmer. Marco showed up a little bit later. He was younger than what I expected. He was probably in his late 30s. He had a kind of calm, solid presence. You could tell that he was the main guy in the whole operation. They showed me to this small guest room in the back of the house. It was very simple, clean. That first night we had dinner together. It was really, really nice. At dawn, I was woken by a knock on my door just once, and I remember when I opened the door, there was nobody there. The house was pretty quiet. I got dressed fairly quickly, and outside, Emilio was already out near the grove holding this bag of tools. He wanted me to check the drip lines and make sure that their irrigation system wasn't leaking anywhere, and also remove any of the small shoots at the base of the trunk. Occasionally, as I worked, I'd glance back to the house. At one point, Juliana came out and waved at the kitchen door. I felt so awkward that first day. Near midday, I was working on one of the trees near the edge of the grove, and I had this weird moment. I thought that someone was behind me. There wasn't exactly footsteps, just a kind of flicker of awareness, I suppose. The kind of thing that you feel more than you hear or see. I turned around, and for a second I swear I saw someone standing at the far end of the grove between the trees. And then a person appeared pretty far away. It was a kid. He had a pale t-shirt on, dark shorts, barefoot. He was watching me from afar. I thought maybe it was one of Marco's sons. And when I looked again, he was gone. Later that day, I asked Marco in broken English and hand gestures if his boys were visiting, and he looked confused and shook his head and said, "No, weekend, school." That night we had some dinner inside. Juliana made this delicious meal. Emilio was just always so quiet, watching me, rarely smiling. Marco tried to include me in the conversation. It was a bit stilted. Around dessert time, I asked casually if there was any neighbours nearby, any other families with kids. Marco paused and he shook his head and just said, "Just countryside." After a while, the days kind of seemed to blend into each other. You'd wake up pretty early to avoid the sun. I was always sore, lower back, calves, shoulders, and I don't think I stopped sweating once during that first week. I was mostly weeding at this point and checking the water lines. Sometimes I worked with Marco, but more often than not I was working on my own. There was other people around, but they didn't really interact with me. Emilio would grunt and he'd point and head off with a tool and a bottle of water. One day I was working away weeding when I saw that boy again. The same boy, pale t-shirt, dark shorts. He looked like he was about 8 or 9. Sometimes he'd be closer, sometimes farther away. Always very quiet, always kind of still, just watching me from between the trees. I tried to call out once, but he didn't answer. I'd get fed up and look away, and when I turn back, he'd be gone. One time I even walked over to the spot where I thought he was standing, and the ground was undisturbed. There was no footprints. Didn't look like there was anybody there. I started to convince myself that it was one of Marco's kids, maybe sneaking off when no one was looking, or maybe I was dehydrated. One afternoon, the sky had gone this kind of dull white that comes before a storm, even though the air was pretty hot, and I was working near this old stone wall at the edge of the grove, dragging up this dry grass. And I heard this laughter, a child's laugh. It was like it was just over my shoulder, and I spun around expecting to see one of the boys, but there was nobody there. Just trees, long rows of silver green leaves. By the end of the second week, I had seen this boy on multiple occasions, and I wasn't just catching glimpses of him anymore. He seemed to be coming a little bit closer to me. Sometimes I'd look up from whatever I was doing and I'd find him just a few feet away, standing between the trees. When I think of it now, I never saw him walk. He was either there or he wasn't. He never spoke, even though I tried to speak to him on multiple occasions. There was something about his face. I wouldn't say it was threatening, but his expression seemed kind of heavy. Sometimes he'd raise his hand and point towards the far end of the grove. Other times he'd just tilt his head, like he was listening for something that I couldn't hear. One particular day, it was unbearably hot. I decided to take a break and rested near the old dry stone wall, the same spot where I'd heard the laughter. The heat was making me feel sick, like as if I was going to pass out at any moment. I put my head between my legs, and when I looked up, I saw him again, closer than ever this time. Maybe 10 feet away. Just standing, watching me. Every time I saw this boy, I tried to communicate with him. I'd ask questions. What was his name? I'd say Marco, Emilio. And he wouldn't interact with me. On this particular day, I thought he was going to finally say something to me and break the boredom of me doing this weeding and jobs that were mostly on my own. And just when I thought he was going to say something, I heard someone shout in the distance. I turned around and I saw Emilio storming towards me across the grove. He was furious. He was yelling in Italian words that I didn't recognise or never heard before. He grabbed this sickle that I had left in the grass and threw it across the dirt. Then he pointed at me, pointed at the house, and then back again to me. And he was shouting until his voice was hoarse. His wife came outside. She had very little English, but from what I gathered, he was claiming that I was on drugs or drunk or crazy or something. In the end, they had to call Marco, who came, and his father spoke to him in Italian. And at the end of the conversation, Marco wanted to know if I had drugs with me or if I was drinking, which was baffling. I told him I wasn't on anything, and I was asking why was he saying that I was on drugs or drinking. Marco then said, "It's okay, forget it, it's okay," which led me to believe that maybe his father had some sort of mental illness that I wasn't aware of, and that he had these moments of craziness, I guess. That night, dinner was practically silent. I ended up going to bed earlier than usual, and I could hear them talking downstairs for a long time. They seemed to be arguing back and forth. I remember not sleeping much that night. Kept waking up and having to sit at the edge of the bed with the window open, mixture of wondering what the hell had happened and the heat. At some point near dawn, I ended up leaving the room. When I ended up going outside, I immediately saw the boy again. He was standing by the old stone wall, and it looked like he was waiting for me. This time I didn't stop. I just walked straight towards him, and he just watched me approach him, and then just as I reached him, he disappeared right in front of my eyes. In a moment of panic, I went back inside and I told Juliana there was a boy and he's gone. She came outside with me. She must have been concerned about what the hell I was talking about. Pointed over to the wall and tried to explain to her that there was a boy there and he disappeared. She just kept saying to me, "It's okay, it's okay." That evening, Marco came to my bedroom door, and when he stepped inside, I could see that he was holding something in his hand. He said, "My brother," and tapped on one of these pictures that he had brought. In the picture, there was two boys standing with olive trees in the background. The younger boy wore this pale shirt and dark shorts, and he looked exactly like the boy I had seen on the farm. I just remember staring at the picture for a really long time, and Marco eventually told me that he died many years ago in an accident near the wall. I didn't ask how, I didn't need to. And he just patted me on the shoulder, stood up and left. After that, I only had a couple of days left on the farm. I never saw the boy again. Emilio was back acting the same. Turned out that he had witnessed me talking to nobody on multiple occasions and thought that I had brought drugs with me, and I was high, going around every day. It's been years now, and I still think about that summer. It was an amazing experience, and it was my first and only paranormal experience so far. I guess the one question I have in my mind is, why me? Why did he appear to me? For what reason? Thank you, Daniel, for sending in your paranormal experience. Sounds like two amazing experiences, and one there working on an olive farm in Italy and seeing a ghost. That's like a 2-for-1 special. A 2-for-1 terrifying special. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode, and don't forget to hit that follow button so you don't miss any future episodes. You can also find the link to the show's Instagram and Facebook group in the episode show notes, and join me next time for another episode of Scary.
Have you ever wiped with a piece of dry, single-ply toilet paper and wondered, is this as good as it gets? Well, it's not. It gets a lot better thanks to the wet, extra-large cleaning power of Dude Wipes. They comfortably clean up whatever TP leaves behind on your behind. It's time to stop being an a-hole to your b-hole and start experiencing the confident clean of Dude Wipes. Available at Amazon and at major retailers nationwide. Dude Wipes. Best clean, pants down.